posted. Are you on Twitter?
Not.
Okay, I just posted a picture of me and Bruno Sammartino. You know who Bruno Sammartino is, right? I said, I always looked up to Bruno, never realizing that I would have his last match. 22,000 likes. I mean, it was seen by 232 views, 1,000 views. And the way that happened was Vince was commentating with Bruno. And he said to Bruno, he goes, now Bruno's already retired. And he goes, you know, Bruno, I want you to be the Babe Ruth of the WWF. And I think it was WWF back then. And he goes, because I was Steve Lombardi still. And he goes, Vince, I don't want to wrestle anymore. But he told me this every time I was in an autograph session with him. He goes, but I says, if I do wrestle, I want to wrestle Steve Lombardi because he's not greedy in the ring. He makes everybody look good. He's got a good attitude, and that's my stipulation. So I had a match. It was him and David against me and Mr. X, which was Danny Davis.
Yeah.
And Bruno got in there, and I always thought Bruno was a kicker and a puncher, but he was more like, give me a tackle, drop down, I'll go for hip toss. You know, he was into spots. But when I was a kid, I was 16 years old, and I was looking at wrestling magazines in the backyard of my mom's house with my brother and everybody. Not for the wrestling, but because we were bodybuilding, you know. So I always looked at Bruno, and I got a big chest because I wanted a chest. My brother liked Billy Graham, which is another person I wrestled, which I put up the match, and I never realized that later in life I will be wrestling every single one of these people. And I wrestled all these people at the end of their careers.
I met Bruno with my dad at a restaurant, and I was wrestling at the time, and Bruno was my dad's hero. He could not have been more of a gentleman. Fast forward like 4 years later, I'm at an indie show. I'm working the show, and Bruno was one of the name guys there, so he was in the back. I went up to him. I said, you know, Mr. Sammartino, I just want to say hello. I met you with my dad a couple of years ago. He was so happy to meet you. It meant so much to me. And I was leaving. We said our goodbyes. He goes, hold on, one more thing, Mike. He calls me back over. He goes, make sure you tell your dad I said hello.
See, that's the kind of guy he was. He was very, very polite, very humble. And if you would have said to him, well, that was after his career was over or during his career?
No, it was over. It was in the 90s, late 90s.
Yeah, so if you would have said to him, Bruno, who'd you have your last match with? He would have said Steve Lombardi, and he would have told you the story. You know, because people when they hear that, they think, oh, he wrestled Butch Reed, he wrestled this. Yeah, on TV when he was actively wrestling. But I wrestled him after he was retired. You know, and it was like a dream come true to me because I always looked up to him when I was a kid. You know what I mean? I always liked him. You know, and every time I went to an autograph session, I would always go in the front of the line and say, Bruno. He goes, oh, Steve. And he would tell me the same story over again. You had my last match. He goes, because I asked you specifically. You know what I mean? I mean, that's pretty heavy. That's pretty good to me. I was freaking out. You know, not knowing he was going to pass. When he passed, it killed me. You know, because he never drank, he never smoked, he never did anything. He was against all of that stuff.
You ever watch any of the Bruno documentaries? His life story is unbelievable.
Yeah, even Arnold. Arnold, I think, inducted him into the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. He said he's one of the strongest men I've ever met in my life. He was just a clean living, natural, strong man. You know what I mean? But he had a chest like a barrel. You know what I mean? He was like, but he wasn't stiff. He was very, very loose in the ring. He was very nice, very polite. But he was commentating, so he was watching me have matches, and that's the person he wanted to wrestle because he seen I wasn't greedy. Because a lot of people would have took advantage. They would have went in the ring with Bruno. They would have poked his eyes. They would have kicked him. You know what I mean? I was out there to make you look good. The beauty about my career is I always understood from the beginning, when I go in there with a talent, I get their weaknesses and I hide them. I get their strengths and I accentuate them. That's the secret to making a star. And they don't even, they're just realizing it now. You know what I mean? Oh, you always lose. When I was young. Now, now we realize you actually made the star. I made him look good. You know what I mean? Because you put him with someone else, they wouldn't. They would take privileges. You know, my goal was just to get him over, and it worked because every new guy came in. That's why they put me with Rock. But that's why they put me with Ricky Steamboat. That's why they put me with Brett. I mean, I told Brett. I just seen Brett 2 weeks ago in an appearance, and I said, Brett, when you walked in the dressing room, you had a baseball cap on backwards. You didn't look like anything. You would be anybody. He goes, I know, you're right. He goes, and I remember our match at Cincinnati Gardens. He says, when I first came in, I wrestled you. He told me this 2 weeks ago. I knew it. I mean, it's a known fact.
How do you want Steve Lombardi to be remembered? How do you want the fans to remember you?
I want the fans to remember me as I had a very, very blessed career, but yet I'm no better than anyone else. I'm humble, and I realized me not being greedy got me all the accolades that I got.
As someone who watched you as a kid, as someone who watched you breaking into wrestling, and someone who watched you years later and understand your contributions, I just want to say thank you for all you've done. You like you said, you definitely went out of your way to make the talent which made the wrestling business a better place, and you are owed a lot of gratitude from every wrestling fan, Steve. So thank you so much for everything.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.